All right, we talked about this last time, the bystander effect. And we know this takes place because we've seen it over and over and over and over again. When do people help is the question. And the answer is the more people that are around, the less likely people are to help. If they're around people that they know, they're more likely to help. If they're around people they don't know, they're less likely to help. Males will help women more frequently than they'll help men. Women help both men and women just about equally. Latina and Rodin staged an experiment around a woman in distress. 70% of the individuals when alone responded to the woman's obvious distress. 40% of the pairs responded to the woman's distress. So when there was more than one person, one of them was talking the other one out of helping. As interesting as that sounds. Of the 60% who didn't respond, most of them interpreted the situation as a non-emergency. In other words, one of them talked the other one out of helping. As the number of people witnessing the emergency increased, of course, the less likely anyone would render assistance. So this is something that you need to think about. If you're around a lot of people and you see somebody in distress, you need to be the one to help. You need to be the one to help because the other people will assume that somebody else is going to help. Everybody will assume that somebody else is going to help, and then nobody will help. As sad as that sounds. Not only are people more likely to misinterpret an actor's actions while in a group, but they are also more likely to misinterpret the willingness of other bystanders to help. And of course, this is the basic problem. We're assuming everybody else is thinking the same thing that we're thinking. And so you're waiting for the leader to start. Well, in a group of individuals that don't know each other, who's the leader? There is no leader, unfortunately. It seems that the more people who witness a situation, the more likely each is to assume that someone else will take responsibility for the situation, a diffused responsibility for the action. Of course, that is the basic problem. And that's the reason why you have to be the person to do it. Studies in large cities and more rural settings show that the fewer people involved, the more likely people will intervene. Youssef and Corte, looking at New Yorkers' failure to, time and time again to respond to the aid of other individuals, refers to the atmosphere in large municipalities as sensory overload and compassion fatigue. And the reality is, there's not a whole hell of a lot of compassion out there in a city setting. I hate to tell you this, so if you move to Los Angeles, you move to Phoenix, you move to New York, you move to Chicago, what you're going to see is a lot of people that don't care. It's not compassion fatigue, it's more sensory overload. There's so many people around, and people are scared of people that they don't know. And of course, they don't know anybody. That's the whole point. I was in Chicago. What was I doing? I was going to a birthday party. My sister used to live in Chicago. She has 4 daughters, and then she's got a husband, of course. But we were picking up some kind of cake at a bakery in Chicago, and I gave the lady. I gave her a 10, and it was like $11. So I gave her a 20. So I gave her $30, and I expected her to give me back my 10. But she gave me change for $20, is what she gave me change for. And I gave her $30. Okay. What's my point? My point is she misinterpreted what was going on, and there were a lot of people. And of course I complained, and I wanted my $20, and they counted the till. They went in and counted the till, and they couldn't find that $10. She had pocketed the other $10. That's what she did. Which is cool, but you know, that's city people for you sometimes. So a lot of sensory overload. There's a lot of things happening. Why should she care if I'm out $10? You know, that's $10 free for her. So really kind of interesting. To exonerate humanity, of course, when people are with people that they know, they're more likely to try to help. So if you're with your buddy and you're driving down the road and you see somebody struggling with a flat tire, you and your buddy are more likely to stop.
That's where integrity comes into play. Basically, sometimes, I mean, even for me, sometimes I'll do that. I'll give kind of like extra cash just to kind of test them out, see see how trustworthy they are.
Exactly.
And then see if they're able to hold up to their ethics and stuff of that nature. And sometimes if they do, and when they know that that you do give them extra cash,
Exactly.
they give you the extra funds back to
Right.
you. And then for me, I just acknowledge to them and say, hey, good job, great.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
honestly goes a
Yeah,
long way.
thank you for being honest and having integrity.
Exactly.
The other day, a guy came to my door. He said, I think I told you this story. The guy came to my door and he said, I ran out of gas over at Saley Lake. He walked all the way from Saley Lake over to my house. Now, how he knew that I might be somebody that might give him some money, I don't know. But anyway, he knocked on my door. I'm thinking, he's knocking on everybody's door? No, somebody sent him over to my house. Anyway, he knocked on my door and he said he's out of gas. So I gave him $10. And about half an hour later, he came back. And he still wasn't in a car. That was the part that confused me the most. Actually, he offered to stack my wood. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, that's going to happen. So then he came over and said, you know, my baby needs diapers. And, you know, and I'm soft-headed and soft-hearted, so I gave him a $20 bill. He said, I'll come back and stack your wood. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, that's going to happen. He's got 30 of my dollars and he's going to come back and stack my wood. He didn't have to. Didn't have to stack my wood. He did come back and he did stack my wood. I was impressed. And I wasn't even there when he stacked it. So here's a guy that actually, just like Edison was saying, he lived up to what he said he was going to do. He came back another time and asked me, well, I want to stack it when you're here. And I said, well, I work all day. I teach at the school and I'm gone until 5 o'clock. And he said, well, okay, maybe I'll come back then. And the next day when I came back, he had stacked my wood. So there you go. And I was impressed because I've had other people the same situation. And other people didn't do what they said they were going to do. But he did. And I'm very happy about that. Now I've got stacked wood. I was getting in trouble because they want my wood stacked. I don't know why they want me to stack my. I mean, it's wood, right? Why should it be stacked? A pile is kind of stacking, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, we're okay now. 1967, James Bryan and Mary Ann Test researched helping patterns in Los Angeles. Of course, we've just ripped the people in New York and Chicago all upside one side and down the other for being cold-hearted bastards. So what happened in Los Angeles? Well, what they did, they had a lady that had a flat tire. Of course, this is a flat tire way out in the middle of nowhere. But this was a flat tire on the, not the interstates, I don't call them interstates. What do they call them in Los Angeles? I can't think of it. Anyway, they have these roads, 5, and the 101 and whatnot. They discovered that people were likely to assist a female driver with a flat tire if they observed someone else helping a female driver with a flat tire 1/4 of a mile up the road. So if they saw somebody else helping, they would help. Now, this is really kind of interesting. So it's almost like we're followers, not leaders. It gets worse. Yeah, we are followers. They went out to New Jersey to observe the donation patterns of Christmas shoppers. And ever since I read about this research, I'm always thinking, every time it's Christmas, I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm at Walmart. Who gives money to the Salvation Army at Walmart? I mean, almost everybody just walks right past. You never see anybody put money in the thing. And so every time I go to Walmart, I always drop a couple bucks in the bucket, or a $5 bill, or whatever. Anyway, thinking, of course, of this piece of research. So they went out to New Jersey, which is one of the meanest places you could possibly imagine. They found that people were more likely to drop money in a Salvation Army kettle if they had just seen someone else do the same thing. So we are followers. We're followers, we're not leaders. We tend not to be leaders. So every time I see a Salvation Army bucket, I drop money in, even though I don't really care about the Salvation Army that much. At least I'm assuming that the money is going to go to the right place, right? Is that what the assumption is? Felipe Rushton and Ann Campbell found that British adults were more willing to donate blood if they are approached after observing someone who has consented to donate blood. In other words, we are followers. So this, they saw it in New Jersey, they saw it in Los Angeles with the flat tire, they saw it in New Jersey with Salvation Army donations, and now the British we see the same thing in England. We are followers. We are not leaders. This one drives me crazy. One factor of modern life is time restraints that we all live under. Of course, if you're rushing to get someplace, you're less likely to help. A clever experiment by Darley and Batson in 1973 pitted seminary students and a homeless man. You understand who seminary students are. These are guys that are going to be priests, all right? They live by the Bible, right? They're priests, theoretically. They live by the Bible. So what happened? After listening to the parable of the Good Samaritan, which I told you guys about last time, two groups of seminary students were confronted with a groaning man on the way to an appointment. For the students under no constraints, 2/3 of them stopped to help. Of the students under constraints, only 10% stopped to help. Now these are people theoretically who live by the Bible. These are individuals who are going to have their own parishes, and they're going to have to help the people in the parish. They're going to have to give of themselves for the rest of their lives. Right? They don't take anything. They only give. These are people that are givers. Are you getting the picture? Now the sad thing is that only 10% of the people that were under time constraints stopped. That means 90% didn't. That means 9 out of every 10 of these individuals who have a profession of giving of themselves, 90% of these people didn't stop to help. But I think the sadder thing is that even the individuals under no time constraints whatsoever, still 3 out of every 10 didn't stop. So what kind of priests are these guys going to make? What kind of priests are they going to be? Well, we can pick on the Catholic Church, but seminaries, they also have seminaries in Protestant churches as well. What my point is, here we have these religious people theoretically who are living by the Bible, and 3 out of 10 of them aren't willing to stop and help somebody. I think that's tragic. I think they aren't living by the precepts that they have adopted themselves. That is tragic as far as I'm concerned. See, this should be 90%. This should be 95%. This should be 100%, okay? These guys are seminary. Here I'm picking on religion again. I'm sorry. It just really, this one really bugs me. Researchers have often discovered that people who have been induced to lie will feel guilty to the extent that they seek to reclaim their public image. Even when the guilt is not observed, the subject is more likely to seek retribution by volunteering or redeeming themselves in one way or another. I think I told you the story of when I cheated on a test. It was a final, too. It was Anglo-Saxon. I don't know if you know anything about Anglo-Saxon. It looks like German. It's hard. Some of the words are the same as English, but that very few and far between. So I've been struggling with it all semester long. We had a really bad dictionary in the back of our book. It's Bright's Anglo-Saxon Reader. And of course, for the final, we had to translate a page of Anglo-Saxon text. And so, we sit down. There's like 15 guys in the class. We sit down and we're working on this thing, and fairly quickly, people start leaving. And I'm going, what's going on? the professor left. He said, well, go ahead and you can turn these in at my office. Just slip them under the door. So here we are, you know, we're sitting there. We've been sitting there for about 15 minutes, and people start filtering out. They're leaving. What in the world's going on here? I mean, we're supposed to be translating this whole page of text. So they're leaving, and pretty soon there's only 2 of us in the room. I've been working on this thing for half an hour. I have maybe 2 sentences out of 20 or 30, and the other guy comes up to me and he says, you know, if you go over to the library, they've got a translation of that, and that's where everybody else is going. What had happened was I was the lone independent. Everybody else was a fraternity person, and fraternity people know the best ways to cheat, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, they all knew to go over to the library, and he said, you know, there must be 20 or 30 translations of this over there. All you need to do is go over and find one. And I did. I went over and I copied the translation. I missed enough so that it didn't look like I was cheating. I know, I'm smarter than that. I got an A- on the final. I got an A- in the class. But I felt so guilty about cheating. This is the first time I'd ever cheated. I felt so guilty about cheating that summer I translated the entire Bright's Anglo-Saxon Reader. Translated the whole thing. I felt so bad about that. Yeah, as stupid as that sounds. I know. I'm not even good at cheating, okay? I felt so bad about that. We were headed to Purdue for some kind of a 4-H thing, and we were playing cards in the bus on the way down. It's about a 2.5-hour drive, and so all of us were kind of sitting around. There were like 6 of us sitting around playing this strange card game, and I was winning, and I was going, oh, I'm gonna win this game. And then all of a sudden, this other lady went out, and she had just picked up a whole handful of cards. And she went out, and I went, how in the world did you do that? Well, what she did, instead of laying 1 card down, she was laying several cards down, and 3 or 4 cards down. And of course, since they were stacked up, you couldn't tell that there was more than 1. And so she went out relatively quickly. And I was thinking, why would you cheat in a card game? I mean, does that make any sense? Why would you cheat? But now, today, guess what she does? This lady who taught me that cheating was something that people actually did. This is the first time I'd ever seen anybody cheat in a card game. Well, guess what she does today?
Dealer.
Dealer in Las Vegas. No, she's a lawyer. I know, it's funny. Okay, so guilt. I'm not very good at guilt. I was never raised in a religious situation, so I don't really understand guilt. Some people do, some people don't. Some people don't mind cheating, and other people, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like I'm cheating myself. Negative moods. Researchers have delved into the effect of other negative moods other than guilt, and discovered that sometimes it causes less helping behavior and sometimes more. Guilt is really kind of interesting because guilt is inborn as far as religion is concerned. And I was talking to Dr. Wolf about this yesterday. We were talking about guilt. And she was raised in the Catholic Church. She went to Catholic grade school, she went to Catholic middle school, she went to Catholic high school. And this lady was taught guilt from the very beginning. If you are a select religion, then they teach you that you're guilty, that you are sinful just being born. Which seems a little odd to me, but that's what their teaching is. So guilt is the way that the church controls you. They make you feel guilty about what you're doing, and that's the way they can control you. As interesting as that is. So guilt is really kind of interesting. It's like everybody feels guilt, or is supposed to feel guilt. And here I am. I'm this novice. I'm this virgin. I don't understand I've never cheated before. I've cheated the first time. I feel so guilty about it that I translated the whole book, as confusing as that is. Anyway, so this is one of the negative moods that you can have. They discovered that sometimes it causes less helping behavior, and sometimes it creates more helping behavior. With children, negative moods tend to decrease helping behavior. The younger you are, the less if you're feeling bad, the less likely you are to help other individuals. With adults, negative moods tend to increase helping behavior. Why would that be? I just told you that religion forces you to, or it teaches you guilt. So why in the world would feeling bad make you help people more as an adult? Uh-oh. I know. Everything's upside down and backwards, isn't it? Dr. Wolf and I were talking about this yesterday as well. Sometimes people do things to make themselves feel better. And if you adhere to the precepts of religion, of select religions, then they teach you that if you've done something wrong, you can exonerate yourself by doing something good. So with this teaching going on, this idea, this concept out there, there are select individuals who, when they do something bad, then they do something good. If I rob the bank, then I give some of the money to the poor, and that makes me feel better. This person's starving to death, so now I give them, $100.
Well, it's kind of a way of cleansing.
I'm cleansing myself, exactly. I've committed this sin, and now I've done something good.
Repenting.
Repent, exactly. As confusing as all that is.
Yeah.
Now, in my philosophy, I would just not do the bad thing to begin with. And then I would help somebody. And if I help somebody, then that's really altruism. Because that's me helping somebody without feeling the need to help somebody. Right? No, this is confusing, isn't it? So with adults, of course, it increases behavior, and that's because they're trying to exonerate. They're trying to make themselves feel better. Researchers assume that with adult minds, self-gratification and inner rewards are more possible than they are for children. Of course, a lot of this stuff doesn't make any sense to kids. So maybe we should listen.
I've seen a lot of this on the old TV sitcom Kung Fu.
Oh, really?
The guy travels to the next town or whatever and helps out.
He was a jerk in the last town, so he's going to be a nice guy in this town. So you hope that when he comes to your town, he's screwed somebody in the last town, so that he's nice to you, everybody in the new town. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we have to be really careful of these kung fu people wandering through. When researchers looked at the different generosity of elementary, junior high, and high school students, they discovered that as the children aged, they tended to be more socialized and thus more generous. In other words, now when they go to church, they can understand what they are saying. The older they are, the more likely that they're going to understand what people are telling them. Agreeing with Piaget's developmental theory, children are born selfish and become more and more altruistic as they develop the ability to see the world from another's point of view. And we talk about the three mountain task and whatnot. So the individual tends to be relatively egocentric as a child, fairly individualistic. So what happens with a child that's an only? A child that is the only child in the family. They grow up selfish. Yes, they could be. Do they share? They have to be taught to share. I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters. My parents used to buy packages of caramels, craft caramels, the things that you melt down and then you make caramel apples. I don't know how many caramels were in there, but we always divided them out evenly. So they'd get a package of caramels and they would make 6 piles, 6 equal piles. which doesn't sound that difficult, except there are also chocolate ones in there, and those are the best ones, right? So they would also have to distribute the chocolate ones. Well, if you've ever noticed, 6 does not divide into 10 very well, right? Are you getting the picture? Okay, so there's 10 chocolate caramels in there, and there's 6 kids. So who gets who gets 2 caramels? 2 people don't get 2 caramels. And the way my parents did it, the 2 oldest kids they only got 1 chocolate caramel. I know, as sad as that is. And I was, of course, number 4, so I got 2 chocolate caramels. But being children, of course, and being hungry, or not really, we weren't really hungry, we just had a sweet tooth. The younger we were, the more likely that we would eat our caramels really fast. And so our caramels were gone fairly quickly. I found out later that my brother was hoarding chocolate caramels. He only got 1 every time they got a package. He only got 1, and he would hoard them. And I always wondered, what is he saving them for? Why is he hoarding these caramels? Well, he got us back later on. He used to go to the store. He was the only one that could cross the highway on his bicycle. So he would go to the store on the other side of the highway and buy a package of those small match boxes, you know. So he'd buy like 10 of them. And he bought them for, I don't know, 5 cents a piece. And he sold them to us for 10 cents. So he got us back, as strange as that seems. My brother, he cheated us. Or did he? Was that cheating? Or was that good business? He marked them up 100%. Researchers have discovered that in most cases when people feel bad, they try to do good deeds to make themselves feel better, except in 2 circumstances. One is when they're grieving. When you're grieving, you're relatively selfish, because instead of looking out, you're looking in, and you're feeling bad about whatever has happened. And the other is when you're angry. When you're angry, you want to strike out at somebody. So when you're angry, you tend to not be very altruistic. They also found that when people feel good, they tend to do good deeds. So there you go. If you catch me on the right day, I'll lend you $5 or whatever. I don't know. Looking at personality traits, researchers have discovered that there are individual differences in helpfulness and have shown that these differences persist over time. There are a network of traits that predispose a person toward helpfulness. Those high in emotionality, empathy, and self-efficacy. The better you feel about yourself, the more empathic that you were raised, the more emotional that you are. Which doesn't sound like me, does it? I'm not very emotional. I worked in the hospital too long. You got to lose your emotionality in order just to survive. And I've tried to explain that to you. It's why I'm such a mean son of a bitch. Which is funny because my mother called me a mean son of a bitch. Now think about that for a second. Here my mother is calling me a son of a bitch, and I was her son. Wait a minute, okay. So you understand the real oddity to that statement. High monitoring people are helpful if they think helpfulness will be socially rewarding. And of course, this is really the question. How much social rewarding will a select individual get? Do people really care? Will people really notice? One of the things that we see a lot is that people will donate money, they'll donate things to the church. Now this is part of their social realm. So when they donate something to the church, everybody finds out about it, and now all of these people that are really important to this person think very highly of them because they are donating things to the church. The question is, are they as altruistic outside of the church where nobody knows that they're what they're doing, or are they just people that are showy and need social approval? Correlational studies looking at 172 studies have shown that when faced with situations where strangers need help that is potentially dangerous, men are more likely to help than females. If somebody is drowning in a flooded river, men are more likely to jump in and try to save the person. We see this over and over and over again. There was a case in Mississippi where a football player who had just signed an NFL contract jumped in to save a drowning child, did save the drowning child, but he drowned himself because he couldn't swim. He jumped in a lake despite the fact he couldn't swim. And he was able to find the child in the bottom of the lake, bring them up to the surface, but then of course he couldn't swim, so he couldn't make it back to the, and he died, this individual. Now the interesting thing was, well, I guess it's not that interesting, but he had just signed an NFL contract, and the NFL team actually paid him, despite the fact he was no longer with us, because of his action, which is kind of a nice thing, I guess, if you think about it. In safer situations, however, women are slightly more likely to help than men. Eagley and Crowley speculated that over the long term, rather than the short term for most experiments, women would be seen as more helpful than men. Women are more helpful than men. Well, there are instances of religious leaders making some fairly significant sacrifices. Studies show that intrinsically religious people are only slightly more likely to help in cases of minor emergencies and spontaneous helping acts. So you think of people who go to church, individuals that live by these strictures. You think of them as being holier than somebody who doesn't go to church. But the reality is they don't help hardly any more than an individual that doesn't go to church at all, as it turns out. As far as donations are concerned, however, 24% of the population makes 48% of the charitable contributions. So does that have anything to do with religion? I don't know. Looking at 35 studies that compared help given to men and help given to women, men are more likely to offer help to women than to men. I guess that's fairly logical. Women offered help equally to both genders, but men are more likely to help women than other men. Women are more likely to be offered help than men, and single people are more likely to be offered help than two or more people. You're more likely to pick up one hitchhiker than you are to pick up two hitchhikers. I was watching a movie the other day, and this guy was walking along the road with a bull, and he was trying to get somebody to stop and pick him up. I don't know what he was planning on doing with the bull, but one guy did stop, and of course he had the bull back in the bushes. And the guy said, "Jump in," and he said, "Wait a minute, I've got a friend over here." And he came out with the bull, and the guy took off, of course. He said, No, we were going to attach him to the bumper and let him walk. Then, of course, his girlfriend stopped and with a trailer and picked up the two of them. I know. Or the lady he would eventually marry. Okay. I know, it's a movie. It had Bing Crosby and Frances Farmer in it. I know. That fabulous movie. Okay. Men are more likely to offer help to attractive women. Oh, there's a shock for you. Men are more likely to offer help to attractive women over unattractive women. Women tend to seek help more than men do. And of course, that has to do with gender. Similarity, people are not only more likely to like people who are similar to them, but they're more likely to help people who are similar to them. So if somebody looks like you, then you are more likely to try to help. This was true except in Montana. In Montana, my wife and I would pick up hitchhikers who were native, but we wouldn't pick up white hitchhikers. You can't trust white guys up north. But the natives, they're all really nice people. So we pick up native hitchhikers, but we wouldn't pick up white people. You can't trust white people. When race is a factor, people will help unless the bystander effect is in force. Of course, the more people standing around, the less likely that you will pick somebody up. But we were told not to pick up hitchhikers here. Right, do you agree with that, Travis? Okay. Up north, well, of course, it's cold up north. I had one of my students, for a while there, they had, the social welfare office was in one town, and the reservation was over here, and it was in this other town. So they had to travel 23 miles in order to go to the social welfare office. Well, this lady had just given birth to a child, so she needed SNAP. She was utilizing SNAP, so she needed to go from the reservation over to this other town. And she didn't have a car, so how in the world did she get over to the other town? Well, she hitchhiked, was what she did. Of course, in the summertime up north, it's just as hot as it is down here. It's really hot over there. And so here she is hitchhiking with a baby. And not just a baby, a newborn baby. And people wouldn't pick her up. It's really kind of tragic. After I heard that story, I always pick people up. It just made me feel bad. Researchers have found that any techniques that personalizes bystanders increases willingness to help. Personal request, if somebody asks you, if they make eye contact with you, then you're more likely to help. If they state your name, then you're more likely to help. Anticipation of interaction, if you anticipate that you're going to help them, then you probably will. People are more likely to donate blood if the appeal is personal and from a friend, and of course that's the way it works. People obviously care about their public image, especially individuals high in self-monitoring. The door in the face technique is a strategy for getting people to help by making a larger request that they will no doubt refuse and then accept a smaller, more reasonable request. Every year my college calls me up and asks me if I'll make a donation. And they always say, can you give us $1,000? Can you give us the minimum of $1,000? And I go, no. Well, how about $100 then? They've cut it by 90%. They're only asking for $100. And since I understand the door in the face technique, I always start swearing at them at this point, because it pisses me off. They're using the door in the face technique. Do they think I'm an idiot? Well, they don't understand that I'm a psychology professor, and I know what they're doing to me. And it really upsets me that they're using this technique on me, so I don't give them any money. Or if I give them money, I just give them money. I don't respond to their offer. Arizona State does this. They use the door in the face technique, and they have doubled their donations, their contributions. How about that? So the next time Arizona State calls you on the phone and asks you to give them $150, and then they say, well, can you give us $35? You just call them a son of a bitch, like my mother called me. My mother's so funny. Researchers and historians have discovered that people tend to create a circle of inclusion about them of the people that they attribute similar moral values and rules. And this is known as their moral inclusion. Usually this has to do with a church. Usually it has to, if you're a Catholic, then your moral inclusion includes all the people in the Catholic Church. And you'll help these people because you know these people. So this is part of your moral inclusion. Or if you go to a Methodist church, or if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, or if you're a Church of the Nazarene, or whatever that group is, you're more likely to include those individuals. And you will help them. And if they ask you to give somebody $100, then if they are a church member, then you will do it. Even though you know that everybody in your church is fairly well-to-do, and this person is just suffering a little bit. There are people outside the church that are more needy, but do you give $100 to those people? No, you give money to the people that are in your moral inclusion. Moral exclusion, on the other hand, are all those people outside the sphere of people seen as similar enough to be included in your group, and that's moral exclusion. And that could include, well, it really all depends. A lot of white people, they don't like black people. So that is part of their moral exclusion. They won't help anybody that's black. Maybe in New Mexico and Arizona with all the indigenous people in this area, maybe their moral exclusion is Native people. We see this all the time. We see people helping their own kind but not helping anybody else. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody for $10. Would you lend me $10? I'm a little short right now. Would you lend me $10? What's the probability I'm going to get my $10? Or $40?
I'll charge with interest.
I was just curious.
I'll pull the caramel and chocolate effect.
That's good. I'm just kidding. I don't need $10. I'm good. Yeah, Travis is reaching in his back pocket. Give me $10. I appreciate it. I appreciate the loan. I really don't need it. I'm okay. Researchers and historians have noted that individuals who have no moral model to copy are less likely to maintain an altruistic attitude. This is really kind of interesting because the assumption is that if you are religious and you follow the precepts of a select religion, then you are more moral than somebody who isn't part of a religion. The assumption is that if you're not a religious person, that you're amoral, that you have no morals. You've got nobody telling you what to do. Therefore, you can't be moral, you can't be ethical. Really kind of fascinating. Is this true? People who have no religion have no moral compass. So how do they know what to do? Do you need somebody to tell you what's right and what's wrong? Or can you figure it out on your own? I don't know. What do you think, Travis?
I think it's
You don't have
difficult.
anybody telling you what to do.
You don't have guidance.
You don't have
There's
guidance.
no guidance.
So it has to all be internal. Is that possible?
I think in a way, it might be.
I was worried there for a
Be
second.
somebody
Is it possible?
to remain moral without any guidance.
Or have ethics without somebody telling you what morality you have to have, what morality is? Do we have to be taught morality? Do we have to be taught ethics?
I think in some areas it would be tempting to get away with stuff, but then I think it'll make you feel bad afterwards. So
You mean like me cheating on my...
yeah,
On
that's
my
what the
test.
sense. Yeah, so after you've done the deed, it's just you know you've done something bad and you try to make up for it.
Right. But if you're religious, they tell you exactly what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you less likely to cheat if you have a moral compass?
More likely to cheat, I think.
That was actually what I saw too. All those fraternity guys, they were all. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to have a moral standard to know.
So somebody has to set down the moral
Yeah.
standards. But you can learn them from other, I don't know, from reading books and from talking to your parents. I mean, you're going to get some kind of morality, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What if you read the wrong book?
What if you read the wrong book? I've read the wrong book. Usually those books, what those books are. What do you think, Edison?
I think you can figure it out on your own.
Well, thank
All
you.
depending, on what you're working with.
There you
Because you
go.
got that, like that one kid,
Yeah.
that was, ended up in Mexico because his parents didn't give him the rightful information of do's and don'ts to influence the kid.
Exactly.
I mean, those are kind of like barriers as to what the kid come about as far as, not able to recognize the different things.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I got good news for you. He just got out of jail. Okay, he just got out of jail like 2 weeks ago. So he has been released. He did go to jail. His mother went to jail for trying to allow him to escape, or she's the one who paid for him to escape. Yeah, she went to jail as well. She's out of prison too. So this very wealthy family that this kid had no moral compass whatsoever, ethical or moral compass. Well, what worries me is, okay, so I go to the store, and how do I know that that's a good price for something? You know, I'm going to buy, I don't know what I'm going to buy.
Right.
My wife's buying a car right now. So how does she know that this is a good price?
You ask around.
With cars, you can look it up on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I drink Mountain Dew. Okay, I drink not the green stuff. I drink the red stuff. It's kind of hard to find the red stuff. It's easy to find the green stuff. It's all over the place. But it's kind of hard to find the red stuff. So how do I know that that's a good price for the red stuff? If I go to the commissary in Albuquerque, I go to Walmart in Gallup, I go to Bosch's over here in Chinle, except I haven't been there all year. I don't know if they even have the red stuff anymore. Half the time I go there and they don't have any of the red stuff. And that bugs me. Because I went down there to get the red stuff. And they don't have it. So what am I going to do if they don't have it? I've already driven all the way to Chinle, and I have to drive all the way back without any red stuff. What am I going to do? I know this is bothering you, Travis. This bothers me too.
I deal with that all the time, yeah.
There's only one store in Chinle, right?
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
You have the gas stops.
I guess I could stop at the gas station.
Chevron.
Pull in all those bottles, those 20-ounce bottles. Okay, thank you. That's what I'll do next
What,
time.
what does Coke make? No, that
And nothing tastes like Code Red Mountain Dew. I tried the 7-Up cherry with cherry in it.
no Coke.
No go. Not enough cherry.
Have you seen the amount of sugar they put in Mountain Dew?
I love the sugar that they put in Mountain Dew. That's why I drink it. 170 calories, you bet.
I think that was probably the first.
There you go.
The first energy drink.
Yeah, all the other monster drinks have a lot more sugar and a lot more caffeine in it. But then again, I'm not sensitive to caffeine. So, okay. So what are we doing here? Why are we talking about this? Found the pro-social television. Okay. Researchers and historians have noted that individuals who have no moral code, model to copy, are less likely to maintain an altruistic attitude. Susan Harold has even found that pro-social television programming is modeled. So if we put pro-social cartoons on television, the kids will watch them and they will become more pro-social. So if you watch some of the kids' programming today, a lot of it is very pro-social. That was the whole idea behind Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was such a pro-social program. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Rogers. But now we have other television shows that are very much like that. We have cartoons. Now the sad thing about cartoons in the United States is none of them are made in the United States. Almost all of our cartooning is done in Japan. Okay. Once upon a time, we used to make our own damn cartoons. And we had heroes like Superman. And we had heroes like Mighty Mouse. And we had heroes like Underdog. Okay. So so every time we made a cartoon, we made a hero. But the Japanese don't do that. They don't do single heroes. So what happened to Superman? All of a sudden, he's no longer Superman. He's in the Justice League. And there's always a pile of them. There's always more than one. And that's the way the Japanese do things, which is kind of interesting. So confusingly, one of the things that may happen because we don't do our own cartoons, it may change the way that our children think of things. They may think that they have to gang up on people. I know. goodness comes from group behavior is actually what it's modeling. But we do have pro-social television programming, a lot of pro-social television programming. Oddly enough, one of the first television shows that dealt with this was The Electric Company. They had Sesame Street on, and then the next show was The Electric Company. Now, the strange thing about The Electric Company was that it was a television program that was written as a thesis for somebody's master's degree. Any guesses as to who wrote that thesis? Famous actor. I know, this is a shocker. He's on trial for sexual assault. It's Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby wrote.
Yeah, he did the Cosby show.
Yeah, yeah, all of that was very pro-social, and it was very positive. It was a very positive thing for African Americans. But he's the one that wrote The Electric Company, and he wrote it in a pro-social manner. He wrote it as a proposal for his thesis. He finished it, of course, and he got his master's degree in some kind of I think it was an educational degree. But then they put it on the air, and it was on the air for like 15 years. And then they took it off because, I don't know, who knows? Who knows why? However, if people are rewarded or bribed to do what they already like doing, they may lose the intrinsic reward and see the act extrinsically motivated, and that's known as over-justification effect. So if you start rewarding somebody for doing well in school, you give them money for good grades, all of a sudden they're going to want to do the good grades because of the money, not because of an internal need to do this. Over-justification effect. So you can condition your children. If you give them money for good grades, you can condition them not to get good grades, not to feel good about their good grades. So what's going to happen when they go off to college? You do this in high school, you do this in elementary school, you do this in junior high school so that they will get good grades, so that they can get into a good college. But you stop when they're 21 years old, or 18 actually in this case. So what happens when they go away to college? The reason that they're studying so hard, the reason that they're getting good grades is for the bucks. Now all of a sudden you start giving them bucks. You figure the tuition for their college is enough. You don't need to keep paying for good grades. So what happens next? Well, they don't have the internal drive to do it, so they stop doing it. They stop getting good grades. They start gambling and drinking. And you have just conditioned this child to be a bad student. And that's known as the over-justification effect. Anyway, as much fun as that is. So don't pay your kids for good grades. I guess that's the bottom line. All right. The next chapter is a lot of fun. This is one of them that we really have to cover because, what is that? That was 11, this is 12. Okay. Yeah, because it has to do with aggression. Yeah.
So the test is just on 9, 10, and 12?
I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Just through 12?
9, 10, and 12.
9,
It's
10.
not 11.
I must have missed 11 last time.
So I said, remember, it's what, 11 and 12 or something like that?
Oh, God, you're going to make me look at my test, aren't you? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look at it. Damn. All right, I'll look at it.
Yeah, you could just delete it, that's fine with us.
I'll have to write a new test. Oh, man, I hate to do that. Anyway, it really all depends on how... See, I fall behind a lot in these classes because I tell a lot of stupid stories. So because of that, sometimes I don't cover all the material, but I'm doing fairly well this semester, so...
Or just add the 11 PowerPoint, because that's not Monday.
I could do that. Well, yeah, I'll probably do that. I've got some really sad stories.
I've heard of this.
Now, this is ugly. This is really ugly. 1993, this is in England, this isn't in the United States. A 2-year-old boy was found brutally beaten to death. Turned out that it was 2 10-year-olds that did it. And this is the kid. This is a picture of the 2 kids targeting him. And this is a picture of one of the kids leading him out to the railroad tracks where they beat him to death. It was really kind of sad. The case of the beating death of James Bulger confounded police initially because the blows were not characteristically severe enough to indicate an adult. I don't know if you've ever tried to punch somebody, but it hurts your hand. And especially if you're 10 years old, it's not really easy to beat somebody to death. But these two kids actually were able to do that. 10-year-olds. Where do they get the idea that they need to beat somebody to death? The world celebrated the destruction of the Berlin Wall in 1989, not 3 years later, with the increase of unemployment from East Germany because the wall had come down. The East Germans had joined the West Germans. East Germans didn't have the same working skills that the West Germans had. They started having problems with all these jobs. Germany had what they called guest workers, and they would bring people in from Turkey and Italy and places where they didn't have jobs. They would go up to Germany, and then they would start working in Germany, making fairly good money. So there were a lot of Turks up there. There were a lot of Italians up there. But the East Germans, of course, weren't used to this. They weren't used to seeing people that were not German. So they started these skinhead movements in Germany. 40 hate groups sprung up to protest immigration. They were protesting the Turks, is what they were protesting. They didn't mind the Italians because the Italians looked more like them. But they didn't like the Turks because the Turks were Muslim for one thing. The other thing was that they were darker complexioned. In Rostock in 1992, 45 Turkish immigrants were burned to death in the firebombing by German skinheads. So when we talk about skinheads, and I don't know if you've ever heard about skinheads before, but they are right-wing neo-Nazi people. We see skinheads in England, we see skinheads in France, and we also see them in Germany. Not so much in the United States, but actually they're here. There are skinhead groups in the United States. Most of them are neo-Nazi groups. They wear combat boots or Doc Martens, if you know what Doc Martens are. Does anybody know what Doc Martens are? You don't know what Doc Martens are? They look like combat boots. They're just commercial combat boots. They wear combat boots, they shave their heads, and they put Nazi symbols all over themselves, as odd as this seems. There's something about skinheads right now. Oh, there is a movement in Europe to become more conservative, and the skinheads are part of that whole conservative movement. So if you listen to politics, and if you even care about what's going on in Germany and France and England, one of the things is that they're moving more and more to the right. And in this case, if they move too far to the right, this is what you get. We've done the same thing in the United States. We've moved to the right, and now look what we have. So it may be interesting to watch this stuff, to see what happens next. Tension between the majority Hutu and the ruling Tutsi of Rwanda have been going on for centuries. Back in the 1960s, there was a dance called the Watusi. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but the Watusi are very tall. The Hutu are shorter, but the Watusi are tall and slender. So the Watusi, you bounce up and down, and you make all kinds of interesting movements. My wife is really good at the Watusi. Anyway, that's what the Watusi was. But this was, the reality is, of course, everybody's dancing the Watusi back in the 1960s. Nobody's thinking anything about these two groups. But actually, they'd been warring for an extended length of time. Periodic massacres had taken place. Usually it was the Tutsi that were massacring the Hutu. And the reason they were is because they were in charge. They were taller, they were more powerful. There were more Hutu, but of course you need to get a group of Hutu together in order to attack a smaller group of Watusi, or of the Tutsi. 1994, when the Hutu government came to power, this is the first time the Hutu had been in power for centuries. When the Hutu came to power, the Hutu went on a rampage that took 750,000 lives. Usually it was really, really ugly. A lot of machete deaths. I don't know if you have any clue what we're talking about when I talk about machetes, but these people were killing people by hitting them with machetes. If you've ever used a machete is very sharp, so it's almost like a blunt force trauma. But it does have an edge, but the edge is like this wide, and it's not a pretty way to go. It was not pretty. They don't die quick. So there were a lot of machete deaths, and of course this is what it looks like. It was really, really nasty. What did we do in the United States about this whole thing? It'd been going on for a couple of weeks. What did we do in the United States in 1994? Who was president in 1994? Bill Clinton. What did we do? Nothing. We don't do anything about Africa. Finally, somebody went into Africa. The French. The French are the ones that control Africa. So the French went in and stopped the massacre. And actually, we sent aid later on. Researchers were shocked to discover that a Canadian survey in 1994 showed that 29%, this is 1 out of every 3 women had experienced, married women had experienced physical and sexual assault from their spouses. 1 out of every 3. That's a lot of people. So if you go to the mall and you're looking at people as they're walking by, 1 out of every 3 of those women had been sexually assaulted in that year. The Canadian image of politeness took a heavy blow, of course. So I decided to look this up and see if they're still having that problem in Canada. Guess what? They're still having that problem in Canada. Canadians seem like such nice people. But husbands think that they have privileges that maybe potentially they don't have. Anyway, it was really kind of shocking. The other shocking thing is that in Canada, most of the trafficked women are First Nation women, for some reason. We don't see that in the United States, but we do see that in Canada. Almost, it's like half. Half of the women that are being trafficked are First Nation women. Now, half of the population of Canada is not First Nation. It's not Indigenous people. Really kind of bizarre. So, if we go, let's go someplace else. Let's go to Australia. What do we see in Australia? We see exactly the same thing. Could it have something to do with the British? Both of those they were Commonwealth nations. Does it have something to do with the Brits? I don't know. This is a question that we can ask, but of course only the Canadians and the Australians can answer. So it's really kind of strange. Where does the violence come from? Why are Brits so violent? I don't know. 1990s were a time of increased police presence in the United States and a decrease in crime. However, sensational crime still gripped the headlines. Foreign tourists were robbed and murdered from the airports in Florida, mostly Germans, for some reason. Ranting teens assaulted women in New York. So these gangs of teens would go out at night, and they called it ranting. They'd just wander around, and if they saw a woman that was by herself, they would attack her, and sometimes they would rape her. And it was just really kind of an ugly situation. 29 students and teachers were killed from 1997 to 1999 in student shootings in Kentucky, Oregon, Mississippi, and Colorado. That's a shocking statistic. Guess how many people have been killed so far this year in school shootings? Well, we know that there were 17 that were killed in Parkland. Guess how many have been killed so far this year? As of March. I can't find any statistics that include April. But as of March 26th, guess how many students have died in schools around the United States? 29 between 1997 and 1999. Guess how many have died in the United States? Any guesses?
56.
That's a good number. It's not. No, it's 26. I just wanted somebody to guess, okay? It's 26 so far. 26 people have died, and that's on March 26th. One of them was here in Arizona, down in the Phoenix area. I think it was in Mesa. In an elementary school, a junior high kid went to the elementary school and shot somebody and killed them. Anyway, that was January 20th. As horrible as that sounds. $2 billion a day is spent on arms and armies in the world. In the last 100 years, 250 wars have been fought worldwide at the cost of 110 million lives. Is that all, just 110 million over a year? Come on, or over 100 years? That's not so bad, is it? At least they were just killing each other, right? They were just killing other soldiers. Well, not anymore. The 20th century saw the killing of people other than soldiers. Europeans, when they fight other Europeans, it's just the armies that tend to fight. But when they're fighting other groups, especially other non-European people, they tend to fight whole populations. And of course, this has been going on for an extended length of time, as sad as that is. Aggression is physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt someone. Psychologists identify two types of aggression. Hostile aggression is aggression driven by anger and performed as an end to itself. This type of aggression is also called effective aggression. Instrumental aggression is a means to some other end other than injuring the other individual. A child seizing a toy would be instrumental aggression. They don't really want to hurt the other individual, they just want something from that individual. So when you were in grade school and there was a bully and they took your lunch money away from you, they threatened to punch you, so you gave them your lunch money. I see this on television. Then that was instrumental aggression. It wasn't hostile aggression. Hostile aggression is they want to damage you. They want to hurt you. Okay. I had a dream about being captured by the North Koreans last night. And they kept condemning me to death, and so I'm waiting for somebody to sneak up behind me and shoot me in the back of the head with a pistol. Of course, if you die in your dream, theoretically you die anyway. But nobody did. I was trying to think of a way of escaping. Of course, you can't escape. I mean, you can't climb over the fence. And I was looking at the fence and trying to figure out if I could get over the fence. It was really kind of a strange dream. The North Koreans didn't go to the last Olympics. They built their own Olympic stadium and they had their own Olympics. And so I thought I would challenge them to a race or something. I don't know. I didn't get to run though. It didn't work. What a strange dream. Most murders represent hostile aggression by someone who knows the victim. All too often someone who is or was romantically involved with the victim. A lot of times we see this. Instrumental aggression occurs in murders when the death of the victim furthers the murderers, as in the case of the cold and calculated killings of crime syndicates, the Valentine's Day massacre and whatnot. The question that many people have asked over the course of humanity is, are humans intrinsically aggressive, or is it society that makes them aggressive? This is an interesting question. Are we naturally aggressive people? Are we naturally aggressive creatures? Or is it society that makes us aggressive? Is it society that's bad? Or am I just a bad guy?
I think society probably triggers the natural aggression. Or, sometimes we...
How do you know who your enemies are? Who tells you who your enemies are? I was talking to this guy the other day. We were talking about gun control. And he was telling me how dangerous the world is. And how he has all these people that want to hurt him or take his stuff. How do we know who these people are? So in order to keep his stuff, he has a military weapon and a large capacity magazine, just in case there's a lot of these people that come to his house to take his stuff. He has 18,000 rounds of ammunition. I know. Just how many enemies do you have? That's the question. How many rounds of ammunition do you have at your house? 18,000. Less than 18,000. If it's less than 18,000, I don't want to hear about it. once the apocalypse hits, then you're a dead man anyway. Everybody's gonna take your stuff. Like, you have to protect your stuff. Go ahead, Francis, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was yeah, that's up. Maybe it's like we are naturally aggressive, but maybe society does trigger the aggression side of it. Where if I have all these maybe shootings and
Right.
like once again domestic violence. Somebody overgoes your boundaries of what your space is.
There you go. So should I be afraid? Do I need to arm myself?
I'm not afraid of being.
Do I have people that want to take my stuff?
You got a nice fancy car.
I do have a nice fancy car, that's for sure. Most people won't fit in it. Kiana will fit in it, so she's the only one that I'm scared of. It's a really tiny car. It's made for Japanese people. The Japanese are about my size, so I fit. If you're over 6 feet tall, you're too tall. Your head is, and then if it's too cold to put the top down, you're not going to fit. Just a hand. Otherwise, you have to scooch down like this. I had a guy that was 6'4" in there one time, and his head was this far over the top. I had to put the top down in order to drive him
Like
right.
Flintstones or something.
If you weigh over 200 pounds, and I weigh right there, I'm at like a 185, 190 sometimes. I just barely fit in that car. I have to scoot over to fasten my seatbelt. It's that tiny. The seats are that tiny. It's really a small car. So I'm not worried about people stealing my car. They won't fit. They might steal it, but they won't be able to drive it away, except for Kiana. You have to call her on the phone and ask her to come over. And, can you drive this car away for us? We just stole it from Bradway. He doesn't have his little car. It's like a kiddie car. It's really kind of fun. But you can have it on my other cars. Big. I mean, it's big enough for real people to be in. I feel like I'm, like I'm a little kid driving a great big car. As funny as that is. Okay, so people want my stuff. What are we talking about? Oh, it's almost time to stop. Rousseau felt that society made people aggressive, but Freud in his theory sided with Darwin. Human aggression is the extension of the animal instinct that we cannot control, and of course that's what makes us aggressive. I need to stop right here because it's time to leave. We'll talk more about this next time. Next week, one of my favorite topics, aggression. What's another? Oh, altruism. This is the end of the book is really pretty good, actually. The rest of the book is, well, it's okay. The end of and of course now I have to look at the test and figure out if I actually have everything in there, and I have to anticipate how much I'm going to be able to get through in the next 2 weeks. Right? This is the 12th week, so we've got 3 more weeks. Next 3 weeks. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Well, we'll get through this, and this is kind of a fun chapter. As ugly as aggression is, but we need to talk about hostility anyway. And we have to decide how many rounds of ammunition we need and how large a capacity of magazine we need to protect ourselves from all those dangerous people out there. Or those armies of people that are wandering around trying to take our stuff. It can happen.